Welcome. It is week 2, session 1 of our lockdown flexibility series. By now you should hopefully have a good idea of what happens during these sessions, but this week all you need is going to be a towel or a band. I'm going to use a band. You may need a yoga block or a second rolled up towel to use as a wedge for your hips at some stage, and also you may notice I've got a kettlebell here. That is an optional extra, so if you've got a little bit of weight, whether it's dumbbells, kettlebells, whether it's a weight plate, you can potentially use that in our Jefferson curls a little bit later. The main difference between this week and last week is that rather than doing multiple rounds, what we're going to try to do is actually do one round of each mobilization, but spend a little bit longer on each section. So let's get going, shall we? Let's get going. So we're going to make a start with our single leg lower downs. So much like we did last week, we are going to hook the towel or hook the band around that leg, bring that up until you feel that stretch through the hamstring. Now I want to stay quite relaxed through my head and neck, and then my other leg, I'm just going to come into a stretch. The key thing on this one is that we try to keep that lower back pressed in tight against the floor throughout. I'll try to keep toes pulled in. Now again, what you might find is that your towel is too small, it's too short, but you end up with head up. Try and get yourself into a position where you are relaxed as much as you can. If that means you can actually adjust, you can actually have the towel behind your hamstring. It doesn't have to be on the foot. You can do the same exercise. Now again, you can take this to make it easier. Bring your foot down. As you make it that little bit more challenging, bring your foot further up. Good. So again, we're going to spend a minute and a half on each exercise, so a little bit longer. Through each one. Keep that lower back pressed in tight in against the floor. We're into the last couple of seconds on this one. Just get yourself ready. Switch over. So again, the wedge that I'm using doesn't have to be the same as what you're using. We're going to come into that prop on the hips back. So that rolled up towel, that yoga block can come onto that other side. Just helps keep that lower back pressed in tight in against the floor. Again, same exercise, just on the other side. Head relaxed back. Good. Most of you guys will hopefully have been in position for a good few seconds already. Now at the point where your knee wants to bend, I want you to really try and squeeze the quad, squeeze the front of the leg. And that's where you're going to really get that stretch through the hamstring. Let's do another 30 seconds. Again, roughly a minute and a half on each side. Longer than we did last week. Just try to push that position. Don't know about you guys, but I can definitely feel that's a little bit more difficult to keep going. Trying to keep that lower back pressed in, tight against the floor. Yeah, if you can comfortably go further than I can, great. Okay, relax. From there, we're going to come into that Jefferson curl. The first one I'm going to do unweighted, just like we did last week. And I think I'm going to set up. Yep, perfect. Just head just off screen. So again, we're going to tuck the chin in. We're going to try and round over as much as possible on the way down. So really round and through the spine as much as possible. When you get to the bottom of that move, you visualize using the hamstrings, using the bum to try and squeeze and draw you back up to standing. Now you can add a little bit of extra weight to it, so you become a weighted one. Because quite often, what can really affect your mobility is not actually muscle tightness, but is muscle weakness. So if we try to get strong through this range in a safe way as possible, remember it should never be painful. It is just optional that you add the extra weight, so if you're not comfortable adding the weight, or if you don't have a weight, that's fine. Don't feel like you have to use it. So again, stand tall, chin tucked in, start to round over, allow the shoulders to drop forward, allow the upper back to drop forward. You're trying to curl in, creating that stretch through the hamstrings, through all the extensors of the back. Each time when you reach the peak of that movement, so as far as you can get, feel that stretch, use the hamstrings, use the glutes, squeeze through there to draw back up. This is going to be my last rep on this one. Again, keeping my weight back, creating that roundness through my spine, feeling that stretch, sitting my weight back. When I reach the bottom, I've got that stretch in the hamstrings and the glutes, draw back up to the top. So that's 1A and 1B. Although I suppose if we're doing a straight shot, this is just one long circuit. So we're going to come into those single leg hamstring pulses. So we're down on one knee, other foot straight out in front, and for this one you can have toes pulled up, toes pointed, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. What we're going to look at doing is actually coming into that ribs down, and it's that push the hips back. And I'm trying to keep that upper spine, the nice natural arch. I'm not trying to drop into it. I'm trying to keep chest up as I lean forward, and then as I come back, driving the hips forward so I feel that stretch across that hip flexor. So again, we're going to spend a full minute and a half on each side. This is just the exact same as last week. Good. So again, that push back, that drive forward. Want to keep the ribs down. So we're getting that stretch on the hamstring as we lean the hips back. And we're getting that stretch in the hip flexor as we drive the hips forward. And we're just working between those two positions. Again, haven't mentioned it yet, but your breath is still very important on this one. Don't want to push to the point where you have to hold your breath. Good. Last couple of seconds on this side. Little test of balance there. Good. We're going to switch sides. We're going to switch sides. So again, same thing. Get into position. Ribs down. And again, that lean forward. Pushing the hips back. Creates that stretch. This time on my left leg, on the hamstring. As I drive forward, I'm going to squeeze glutes, push the hips forward, feel that stretch on the hip flexor on the right, and then push back, hamstring on the left, hip flexor on the right. It's just that alternate between those two. And we're going to spend that minute and a half on each exercise. And again, much like I have said previously, if you want to spend longer on each stretch, pause the video, watch it twice, maybe do it in the morning, then again in the evening, or if you just want to do the video once, maybe you don't even want to do the whole video, that's fine. This is your challenge, it's our challenge really, because I am trying to improve my flexibility just as much as you guys are. Okay, we're coming up to that minute and a half. we're going to have a slight change in our quad stretch. Okay, so the quad stretch, we're going to go for a standing quad stretch. So this time, bringing foot up. Again, as you bring that foot in, bringing the hips forward. Again, don't let the ribs flare out, try and keep ribs down. In that position, squeeze the bum, push the hips forward. Feel that stretch coming down through the front of the thigh. Now you may struggle with that one, and if you do, that's fine. What we want to look at instead is another variation on that sofa stretch. So the sofa stretch, which we had our foot hooked up on top of a chair on top of the sofa last week, we're now going to try and do the same thing against the wall. What the wall does, now I prefer this one, the wall forces you to have your toes pointed, so right up the wall. What that means is a much greater, much more intense stretch on the front of the thigh. So you'll find it's actually much more difficult to bring that foot out in front. And from there, that for me is enough of a stretch on this side. You may be able to posture up and push back, but that's tight enough for me as it is there. I'm going to spend a full minute there. And again, to make this more intense, you would slide your knee closer to the wall. As it is, my knee is about a full 12 inches away from the wall. But that's my goal to work on. The more of an angle you can create at the knee, the more you will feel that stretch through the hip, down through the front of the quad. Now we're coming up on a minute there, so I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm not going to do the standing version, I'm going to do this version, but you choose whichever one you prefer out of those two. So again, starting off from the knees, one foot up on the wall, so toes pointed up the wall, which you just about see. If I move, there we go, if I move my body out of the way of the camera. Then you're going to bring the other foot forward, you may need to help it along. So I can come up just a touch higher on this one. Not much though. And again, in that position, I am trying to drive my hips forward and down to try and create that stretch through the hip flexor, through the quad. So this is the exact same as the sofa stretch, just the action of putting your foot on a wall forces you to point your toes, which increases the intensity of that stretch. Now if you don't feel you're ready to do it against the wall, that's fine. Just stick with the one you were doing before. That's absolutely fine. Last couple of seconds on this one. And then we are up onto our feet. We're going to do our calf raises 3 ways. Again, we're going to take it from roughly 20 seconds per exercise to 30 seconds per exercise. We're going to up it a little bit. So again, toes forward for the first one. 30 seconds, just that press up and back down. Remember, nice steady pace. We're also going to do a standing calf stretch today. Again, if you preferred that 45-degree kneeling calf stretch, that's fine. You can swap back to that one. But I'm just going to show some variations on this today, so some other stretches that you can use. So if you're not sure about the kneeling stretch, what that is, you would go back to week 1, session 1 on the videos. Okay, so we're about 30 seconds in, so we're going to go toes out this time, duck style. And again, just that steady pace, press right up, squeeze, lower back down, under control. This is good. approaching that 30-second mark, so we go the opposite way. We go toes in. For anybody of my generation, you'll think Tommy Pickles from Rugrats. Toes in, and again press up onto the toes and back down. This is good. I'm looking forward to re-watching some of my favourite cartoons. Hopefully the boys will like them. Rugrats would have been right up there as one of the best. Essential Saturday morning viewing. Okay, coming up. May have gone past that 30-second mark, but we'll do a few extra, so I'm not sure. Again, you'll notice I'm not bouncing up and down. I'm not doing millions of reps. I'm just trying to keep a nice, steady pace. Good. And then from there, we're going to come into our standing calf stretch. Now, there's two parts to this. We'll do 45 seconds of each. So a nice long stride. Drive that back heel down into the floor. So this is for the left side. And as I do that, I'm going to try and push my hips forward. As I push my hips forward, you'll feel me stretch one part of the calf. That's going to last for about 45 seconds. We're not going to swap sides. So again, I'm still trying to push the hips forward. I'm not leaning back. Still less important for this particular exercise, but it's a good habit. Don't let your ribs flare up, so keep them down. Still driving the hips forward, pushing that heel down. Another way to think about it is trying to pull your toes up on the left side. Now I'm going to take pressure off in a few seconds, and then instead of driving the hips forward, we're going to try and drive the knee forward. Okay, so ease some of that pressure off. Same position, or roughly the same position. Rather than trying to drive hips forward, we're going to try and drive that knee forward and down. So you can see there, my leg is now bent. So I'm actually trying to drop my knee to the floor while keeping my foot flat. So I'm not allowing myself to do that. I'm keeping my heel on the floor and I'm trying to drop my knee down and forward. So you should, as you do that, feel that stretch on a different part of the calf. Remember, we're doing this just one straight shot through. If you want to spend more time on any of these mobilizations, hit pause, get the tunes on. You know, maybe by the end of lockdown, America will have decided who their next president is, who knows. And then from there, ease out of that, shake out the leg, and we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So that's step forward, long stride, driving that back heel into the floor, push the hips forward. Again, keeping those ribs from flaring up. Really pushing that heel into the floor as you push the hips forward. So you're trying to create that tension, create that drive, that stretch through the calves, and through the calf on the right hand side. We've got about another 10 seconds on this. And again, then we swap to that other calf stretch where we try and drop the knee to the floor. No longer drive the hips forward. And there we go. So ease off some of that tension. Come back, and this time driving the knee forward and down. This one traditionally for me is much tighter. So again, probably one I should spend a bit more time on. But this is the whole point. This is the whole point. Find the ones that are most effective and use the ones that are most effective. Everyone has elements of their training that they neglect, either through design or just through inattention, maybe, I think is probably the nicest way to describe it. Looking really, really solid. This is good. Again, just 45 seconds of each one. I think we're coming up to the last couple of seconds on this. and relax, relax. Okay, that was week 2, session number 1. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you find that maybe you've made some small improvements from week 1, session 1. And I will see you guys later in the week for session number 2 and session number 3. Well done if you've done all 4 videos so far. There are 12 videos in this series altogether. Signing off.